Hey everybody, Chris Rushlow, CEO and co-founder of North Node Solutions, and I want to come to you today and explain a little bit how this algorithm for Facebook and Instagram have changed and how it affects you now these days, because it's not the way it used to be. We want to talk a bit about some of that and the reason why a lot of ads seem to swing a lot, where one day, the ads are good, your CPAs, your results are decent, maybe breaking even, getting you a return, and then the next day they just go off the rails and they're not working too well. And sometimes if you can handle the swings, they kind of dial in, a day or two later, but usually your costs are just usually way up and it's not sustainable for a lot of businesses. And we're seeing a lot of businesses deal with that right now. So what I want to do here is walk you through a little bit about how the bidding system actually works and how to use and capitalize off of this, because there's a certain way that working within the frame of how the algorithm is built and how it's adjusted and changed and evolved is we need to work within it. And we've got this concept that we've figured out, okay, based on conversations with, Facebook reps and just looking at, millions and millions and millions of ad spend across our agency, partner agencies, and to see how this affects it, right? Because now we can usually keep an ad staying fairly consistent and steady and getting steady, consistent returns, and even in this time scale, right? Which a lot of people are talking about is much more difficult to do, but we've been doing this on the platform. Like, we've watched the whole evolution from 10 years ago before, like maybe 9 years ago, when you could start running ads on the platform. Like, we've been running them that long and we've seen a lot of changes. So let me quickly walk you through what this is. But in order to do that, I just want you to understand a few things here. One is, there's these three coping mechanisms that a lot of trainers and a lot of people tell you that you need to do in order to manage your ads, right? And the reality is they're all essentially putting a Band-Aid on the real problem. They're just treating the symptom, not the root cause, right? So understand that these three things, right? A lot of people always talk about what's the main thing with Facebook ads. What's the main thing to give you success? Targeting. Not so much, right? It plays a factor, but it's not the primary factor. I'll explain why. Number two is that they tell you have to refresh your creative. You actually get reps that tell you this a lot, like, oh, you need to refresh your creative more often. The only reason you need to refresh your creative is if your ad's not performing properly, right? Because the amount of traffic, unless you're in a local area, is almost infinite, for a long time. I mean, we've had accounts where we spend 6,000 to 9,000 a day consistently and have for years just in the United States, yet alone the rest of the world, and still finding fresh audience and still doing well and still keep maintaining the steady CPA, cost per acquisition. And so it's possible, right? It's just a matter of giving the algorithm what it needs, right? And the third one is complex optimization tactics. Oftentimes that comes into having, like, people talk about having some, unique structure of their ad sets and ads that make the difference in optimization. Totally junk, right? Not based in any fact. And then the other thing is like the bidding, right? Like complex bidding tactics, like, bid caps and cost caps and target costs and these different things, and how to manipulate these, which, in the short term, sure, they can work for a while. They can work for a day or two, and then you have to adjust them again, right? It's like day trading. You're constantly on it all the time, and it's a hamster wheel, right? So yeah, insert hamster wheel right here, And so these are all coping mechanisms. You shouldn't have to deal with this if you understand it, right? So what we understand about the algorithm is the thing that you actually can control is your bid, right? So we all know you have your bid, which is essentially what your daily budget is. And then, for most people, it's automatic bidding that essentially, they pace out your bid so that you'll spend the right amount of money every day, right? But we found that there's a couple other factors that we don't directly have, control over, but it has to do with the way your ad performs and the reactions and the behaviors to it, right? Which we can actually affect if we understand how to do an ad that gives the right user experience, right? So there's two things here that come with this. We call this our ACE Multiplier, right? And this is our ACE Multiplier, which is something that the algorithm takes into effect when it's actually bidding, because you don't just bid with your money, you bid with the expected action rate of your ad, right? So if your ad has a history, it's supposed to do better. It's supposed to know kind of like what the average CPA, result is going to be, cost per result. And so it'll start to kind of bid in and be really smart about trying to get you at least that, right? Now, they don't always work perfectly like that, but here's something I need you to understand, which is advertiser value, right? So that's kind of what we call user experience, right? So, or not user experience, but like the actual how much you're going to get in the algorithm. It's essentially, what does your ad expect to return, right? You can look at it as one way where one of the best indicators, which is not the only indicator, is to look at your result rate inside of your ads. Okay, inside of your ads manager, it's a column you have to go and actually customize your columns, select result rate, and then look at that, and you'll see that it's based on how many impressions per result, right? And so it's a percentage. It gives you a particular percentage. And when you have had an ad running for a while, that's one of them. Now, it's not just the result rate by itself, which is why we don't just call it result rate right here. We call it the advertiser value, because it's the value that you're bringing to the marketplace. And they measure that by a few different things, that your pixel on your page and how well that's actually converting and how well people are moving through that funnel, that process. And, things like, your click rates and everything else, right? So there's tons of factors that go into this advertiser value, but that's one of them, right? Now we're going to talk about how you do that in a minute. But then the second one is the consumer experience, right? So the consumer experience, so you got the value that you bring, and then the experience that people have. Now, the consumer experience is based on a lot of different factors too. And by the way, neither one of these actual scores are like public facing. Facebook doesn't give you this because they don't want people to try to game the algorithm, right? So this is based off of as much data as we could get, and then millions and millions in ad spend, watching trends, figuring out and reverse engineering the best thing to do, okay? So here's what this is. Consumer experience, you could look at some factors. It's those, some of it is those 3 scores that you see, like the quality score, engagement score, and conversion score, right? Those are 3, but those are clearly not the only ones, right? Then it comes down to, all of the other things like comments, likes, shares, reactions, all of that. But basically, it's like how people react with your ad and how much negative feedback you get, like people hiding your ad, marking it as spam, hide all ads from this user, that type of thing, right? So these 2 things put together actually are is the biggest multiplier of your bid, right? And when you have these 2 things, there's certain ways to do this that we've refined and optimized with ads that get you very high advertiser values and high consumer experience, which then usually lowers your CPM, gives you premium placement in the auction, and allows your ad to continue to sustain going to the highest quality people, right? Because if your ad has a low quality score, it's not going to go to the most likely to convert audience, right? They're going to give that to people who have high quality scores, okay? So essentially, when you have this, you don't have to continue doing crazy targeting, finding new audiences, which deductive reasoning just shows like you run out of that over time in terms of trying to find different targeting, right? You just want to be able to open up more possibilities within a lot of the targets that you have. And oftentimes we really go towards broad, clustered audiences where we stack tons and tons and tons of interest together and do really large audience sizes. Or even when we get to a point, we go broad audience, no targeting, where no targeting is just an age group and a country, right? And because we've trained the pixel enough and we do that properly. Not everyone does that. People use broad ads and that can't train the algorithm. You gotta have specific ads. Okay, we're gonna talk more about that. But essentially, this stops you having to do all of this craziness and have ads that sustain, have ads that don't burn out, have ads that you can consistently rely upon that help you scale. If you wanna learn more about specifically how we go through and engineer our ACE multiplier with our ads, then we've got an online workshop for you where we're going to walk you through it. We're going to show you a bunch of examples that prove the case, and you'll walk away with a PDF that has the training there for you that you can implement for yourself. Okay? Click that link below, register. We'll see you there.